Well, you're the businesswoman anyway.
All right,
so
we
that
are
makes
live,
sense.
Madam Mayor, just to let you know.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the pre-agenda meeting of the Lake Worth Beach City Commission on July 27th, 2022. I've kind of lost track of that. Welcome, everybody. And before we get started,
Your feedback.
I hear voices.
The feedback.
I'm sorry, the feedback's done. Sorry.
Okay. Before we get into it, I, as you know, I watched the meeting last night, and it was a difficult meeting to watch because it was, I mean, one of the hardest subjects that we have to face. But I just wanted to say how proud I was and how impressed I was with the conversations and the exchange of ideas and the, what about this, what about that? It made my heart feel good to watch everybody working so well together, trying to come up with a solution to a very difficult problem. And I want to thank you all. It was great. It's funny to watch from, to watch and not participate. And it was really wonderful. Thank you very much, all of you. So that was, but I know that Commissioner Malega wants to start today with her issues. So let's get started.
I just have one thing, and it's actually twofold. They fall into each other. So I've heard a lot of complaints in regards to the auto repair shops not being good neighbors for many months. And yesterday or the day before, I was driving on South 8th Street, which is a 2-lane, and I couldn't even pull over for a car to get past me because all the vehicles that are parked in the right of way that are being worked on. And I'm talking about cars that are up on jacks, cars that are torn apart, and it's gotten way out of control. And with the support of the rest of the board, I would like for us to start enforcing the fact that they're not supposed to be using the right of way, and have us look at a moratorium on auto repair shops. They are overwhelming in the city. They're inundated in all the communities along the residents, especially in Commissioner McBoy's area, and down south along the railroad tracks, especially. The amount of complaints is just overwhelming. But I originally experienced, like I said, I experienced it for myself 2 days ago and thought, this is a 2-lane road and I can't even go around. We have the Bohemian coming. We're trying to attract new businesses, and these businesses need to be better neighbors. They need to be better business owners. And I don't think that we can continue to ignore it.
Does legal have anything to say about a potential moratorium? I don't know all the rules. It feels like, I don't know if we can discriminate. It feels discriminatory. I don't know how.
Well, I think if the ones that are here were acted better, because I think I personally feel that the industrial part of our city is very important. I would not want to, there was this, I would not want to see it discouraged. But I think that if they are, better neighbors, it wouldn't be as much of a problem.
And that's where we get, like, how do we make them be better neighbors?
Well, we start tagging them.
Yeah, I think we have tools to enforce that. I don't know how well we've been enforcing it, but I would agree with the mayor's comment that I think our sort of grittiness of places that really do real things and provide income and repair services at probably rates that people in the community can afford is a very important part of our city. Yes, I definitely hear you on the better neighbor. In terms of complaints from the auto ones, I actually don't hear anything except the two things that I do hear with a certain amount of consistency is painting when they don't have a proper place to paint, so it's stinking, and I don't know if it's paint or if it's some other epoxy or whatever, but something that causes serious odors into the neighborhood. And the other one is places that install mega stereos and test them at all hours and blare the neighborhood. Those two things I hear quite a bit. The rest of it I don't hear. And in the past, I've heard the parking issue. Haven't heard it lately, but I have heard that in the past.
And Mike, can you hear me? And I agree with all of that. I mean, obviously I'm a small business owner. I'm not saying push the ones that are here out. I'm saying, how do we make them better neighbors? And I don't think we need any more. I mean, if you guys have driven around the city, the amount of tires that are stacked up behind, the oil in just random vats that is sitting out, I'm like, EPA, nightmares. So I really would just like to figure out, how do we enforce better regulations, I guess? And could we think about putting a moratorium? We have probably 200 auto repair shops in 7 square miles.
You could. I've actually heard I've heard this the spray booth thing as well, that there's, and I would say if I were to take a guess in terms of regulating, I would imagine slash absolutely hope that the state, whether through FDACS or DEP, has some pretty strict requirements regarding things like spray booths and obviously like oil recycling and how they store it. Because, and that might be a good start to see what kind of environmental regulations exist for car shops that of and things of that nature. Another concern I have, because I ride down that street all the time to get to City Hall, and something I also notice is, and it's more of a question that maybe legal can look into, is at what point does the shop almost become a junkyard or landfill? Because quite a few of them look like they have vehicles, whether it's old boats, old food trucks, whatever it is, and they're just sitting on the yard for, seems like forever. And obviously, as we know, as those vehicles break down, boats are made of fiberglass, cars with their heavy metals, all that stuff will get into the groundwater. Because my understanding is, things like junkyards and especially landfills, they're required to have some sort of liner or protection to prevent toxic things from getting into our aquifer. So hopefully there's things that already exist that we could work with, but I would definitely be in favor of looking more into that for sure.
Thank you. And you're right. Like some of them, I don't know if you can hear me. Hang on. My question is, again, like Commissioner Diaz just said, like at one point, does it become that the car is completely inoperable and it's just an eyesore? And it's like you said, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for the neighborhood, and they're just junk cars piling up. And a lot of the cars that are on the right of way don't even have plates on them.
Right. And, I'm going to say too, this is H Street I also drive on it all the time. If I almost changing the subject, but not quite, food trucks, the food truck issue. There is in front of Matthew's Brewery, it is blocked off in front, and almost every night there's a food truck there when we have this other lady coming in and trying to say, I want to sell my shave ice and I can't do it. So I think we need to look at a little consistency, at our policy about food trucks, and that's just tangential to the H Street problem. But so I think we have consensus to, ask staff to look into how we can, I think we can ticket every car every day. And to enforce it.
Did you want me to look into the moratorium concept to restrict the ability to open more of the shops while you study it further, almost like a zoning in progress type moratorium?
I would be in favor of that.
And I would, if we would express concern about using staff resources for different things, I would say let the market that one, that if there are too many of the things and there's no market for the services they're providing, they either won't last long or they won't bother to start. Because if there's 200, I don't think there are that many people that are inclined to start another one.
I'm curious from William too, if we can get a map or something of where they're actually allowed, because how far east and west of Dixie are they allowed? I'm just wondering, like, are we at real jeopardy of a bunch of them popping up in areas?
Well, it's the correct me if I'm wrong, it's the industrial artisanal area, I think, that they're only allowed in.
Is that on the north side too? Over
it runs, I think, along.
I don't know. I don't have like
it runs along the railroad tracks.
Yeah,
Right.
I think William has some comments.
William, there you go.
Yeah.
Hi, William.
Hi, how are you all? We have both minor auto repair and major auto repair. I'm sorry, I don't know how to turn my video on today. I'm blocked somehow. But in any event, there's two different types, and then there's a third type that deals with auto sales. We have some pretty stringent requirements. However, we have a ton of them. More than half are legal non-conforming uses based on that they were in place before we put new rules in place. So I think what will be helpful to give you a table that shows what is allowed where and how it can be allowed. and then maybe a map of the ones that we do have licensed. Now, Nicole, who's with the Palm Beach County Fire Rescue, and the group from the county have been trying to enforce the paint booth rules and the effluent rules and the exposed tire rules, and code has code cases against a lot of them. But we do have, probably 25% of our apples are not playing by the rules they're supposed to be playing under. So there are a variety of issues besides the fact that we have a lot of them. And they are allowed in the industrial park of commerce and the artisanal industrial, and minor auto repair is also allowed on mixed use Dixie Highway. But there are performance standards on the minimum size of a lot and other things you have to do before you can open up a new one. But I think almost every one of them on Dixie Highway that has a license for the city is a legal non-conforming use at this point.
Do we know the last time a new one opened up? I feel like it's a crazy question to ask you, but you know so many things, William. There's so much.
Well, there was one that
confidence in you.
opened up on the northeast corner of 7th Avenue North and Dixie Highway that came in as a luxury electronics repair, and now has evolved into a tire store. They have been cited for their tires being stored outside without being undercover. They do not meet the minimum size requirement to be licensed now, but they did way back when they were. This is maybe 5 years ago. There are a couple of new ones that came in that had let their business licenses lapse, that through co-compliance negotiations came in either as a new legal non-conforming use or updated their business license and are now supposedly playing by the rules. And there's also a new one as of maybe a year and a half ago, out in the Park of Commerce. There haven't been a lot of new ones. There have been ones trying to expand their existing services and cannot, or ones that are trying to abide by the rules that were set forth under which they were originally approved. And there's probably several dozen of those working with co-compliance and zoning to come into to conformity with what's required.
So what I'm hearing is it sounds like the pressure for new ones is not enough to warrant legal putting effort into a moratorium. I think that problem takes care of itself. And in terms of the good neighbors, which I hear Commissioner Malega loud and clear, and I think we all support, let's increase our enforcement, and let's also make sure that we send the message, look, we want you to be good neighbors because we support the business that you're doing in this community, but we want you not to endanger this whole business because, there's getting to be pushback. So please step up and do your part, cover your tires, do the various other things, spray booths, etc. But let's make it a strong enforcement message, but also, hey, we encourage businesses and we want them to, we're not trying to drive them out, because I've heard that in the past that a number felt we were just trying to drive them out of town. And I don't think that's very appropriate.
Right. Well, I think that changed in zoning a few years ago, making it artisanal. I've had some issues with that change since it started, because it really does seem to be a push to get rid of the industrial. And a couple of people had said, well, we got to get rid of the industrial area. And I'm like, I really disagree with that. So let's do enforcement.
Madam Mayor?
Yep.
Assistant City Manager Ruiz has his
Oh, I
hand.
see his name. Hi, come on in.
Good morning, guys.
Join us.
Now, and I apologize, I'm having some technical difficulties down here. Just want to weigh in really, and this is a subject that's been talked about for all that I've been here regarding trying to clean up, especially clean up the right-of-way, the illegal use of the right-of-way on GH and East Coast. And
Right.
we already have in place the tools
Mhm.
to enforce it, but historically, when we take that initial step, and I think Commissioner McBoy spoke on briefly because I think he was in office one of the many times that we've tried, there will be an avalanche of outreach back to you guys, specifically to what Commissioner McBoy just said. There's always been that kind of, well, we need to clean up the right of way. You can't get emergency vehicles down it. You can't get city trucks through it. You can't get utility trucks. It's almost a video game. And the accusations of the city trying to make it difficult for small business owners to survive will begin. But through our enforcement, we could initiate that really quick, because like I said, the ordinance is already in place. Invested in signage, if I remember correctly. We had community meetings where we welcomed business owners to come speak with staff and elected officials in the past before we did anything. And every time we've attempted to try to improve those areas, we've kind of just been, we've backed off. And then it just kind of gets worse every time we try. So we have the tools in place, like you guys have been talking about. We just need you guys to be aware of what's going to come downstream if it's.
We can take it. Kim?
Well, I appreciate that, Juan, and also Vice Mayor McFoy for bringing that up. I do think it would be nice to either try to do another outreach to the business owners, and maybe we have Ms. Davis here, like, let's get them in the room, let's introduce her to them, and talk about these issues, even though they've already been talked about before, so that this doesn't just feel like it's coming out of nowhere. So they understand, like, you know, we've done our job, we've reached out to the business community, like Chris said. We want them to know that we do value them, and we do like our industrial areas, and we're not looking to push them out, but we cannot tolerate certain things, and especially bring up with they're just chronic nuisances. If we're talking about testing your stereo, and you know, Chris talks about that in every part of town, the noise, like, how often do we hear complaints about noise? It's not just them, we're not targeting them. So I think an initial meeting or something that staff can put together before we step up the enforcement would go a long way.
I think that's a very good idea, and we can do that, because we want to
Can I-
first show. Yes.
I'm driving, but I just wanted to chime in before I get on the expressway.
Sure.
And I hear you guys with that, but as a business owner, you don't see, you know, our boot camp out in the parking lot flipping tires and being a nuisance. And every business owner has to have some knowledge of what the rules and regulations are when they open their business. And I just don't think that we're being equitable, and that it's fair for people who live around the artisanal district to have to deal with this. So at the same time, I want to protect businesses, but I also feel that we really need to protect the residents who butt up to these communities.
Right.
and-
Well, I think we're all saying the same thing, make them better neighbors. You know, we're not going to try to close them down, but make them better neighbors. And if you bought a house
Absolutely.
if you bought a house next to a industrial area, I mean, that's part of what you're going to get a little bit.
No, but I mean, that you buying a house next to an industrial area doesn't mean that you want to drive down the street and see, you know, 4 cars up on jacks. It looks like they were, you know,
Don't
stripped in the middle of the
disagree.
night.
Don't disagree. But I think we're all saying the same thing. I think
Yeah,
Carmen's got her finger on
it-
the pulse.
The messaging is the key part, and maybe some of the commission needs to go to some of those initial meetings, make it clear. We're trying to push people out, but we do want to raise the expectations. And I agree with Commissioner Malega that, you know, the adjoining residents, and that I have heard from a number of times, should have some reasonable expectations of noise, of smells, of whatnot. And let's make sure that the businesses are, you know, being appropriately conscious of that and acting on it.
And if I may add, sorry.
Go ahead.
As someone who grew up working on cars, and you know, my dad was a mechanic and stuff, I definitely appreciate what Commissioner Malega is saying, because it really is, you know, there's a reason for the standards when it comes to working on cars. And they're mostly environmental, right? It's not just quality of life, but there's really strict protocols on how you deal with certain things because of the environmental impact that it could bring to a neighborhood, which equates to a public health impact. But I think there's something that we have as we bring, you know, when it comes to a moratorium, I would say that should be an absolute last ditch effort. That should be the last card that we keep in our back pocket if it's uncontrollable or whatnot. But before that, we should try absolutely everything to help encourage businesses to become, good neighbors. And I think we have that tool in our pocket, and that tool is how H Street is on the schedule to be vastly improved, with the Vision Zero and streetscaping and all that stuff. So until that work kicks off in a couple years, I think the messaging should be, we appreciate the businesses that do here, because I'll point out, these days the environmentally friendly thing to do is to keep your car running and in tip-top shape, if you will, right? And take care of the vehicles that we do have. And unfortunately, these days, I know it seems like we have a lot of car shops in Lake Worth, but maybe they're all just in Lake Worth because overall, there's not a lot of people willing to work on older cars. And it seems to be an industry that is not necessarily dying out, but it's, these days, it's just not as common for people to work on an old Volvo wagon or so on. So I think I could appreciate that kind of industry existing, because it is in a way artisanal. I mean, I feel like Lake Worth is the only place where we can have a car shop dedicated to working on old Saabs. Like that's
Right.
just not a common thing. But we should kind of take this messaging as a way of like community pride. Until this streetscaping is about to kick off, let's lead by example and clean up the stuff around H Street before that streetscaping gets taken off.
Craig Frost might be helpful with this. He's got the place down on H Street. He's been a business owner there forever. So he might be like a central person to go to, but okay, so can we move on? Do we have consensus?
Really, Madam Mayor, if I may, really
Oh,
quick.
your hand's back up, sorry.
One of the big issues that we're going to encounter, because we've been through this a half a dozen times, but now like we have a better chance, is a lot of the cars that you see are actually employee cars for parking, because there's a lack of parking. And now south of Lake, now with the Bohemian Garage and the spaces that we have, it might help us have a better conversation with the property owners, the business owners, because that's one of the biggest gripes. Because if you think about some of the businesses down there, there are actually really big companies that have a lot of employees, and there's a handful of them. Then there's some small shops as well mixed in there. So it's a combination of it. Just again, we'll engage it, and it's a tri-department effort: leisure, public works, community stability, and you guys we're all in the past. And like I said, we have the tools available to move forward. Prepared those conversations to come.
And I think that this commission is strong enough to take the pushback,
Okay,
right? We can take it.
you got it.
All right.
Well, and I'll work with Carmen and keep you guys informed, and then we'll have those. We'll probably follow the same playbook we did before. It all worked out until the point of initiation and implementation. And we'll coordinate a community kind of business owners meeting
Mhm.
at City Hall like we did last time, and we'll work it that way. But these are all good. It's all good stuff you guys have been talking about, and we'll go from there.
Thanks for that background, Juan. I appreciate it.
I would encourage that the meeting not happen at City Hall, but actually go to somewhere on H Street. And I would also say that there's a language element that at least some of those businesses will have primarily Spanish speaking or Creole speaking owners, and we may want to be ready to accommodate that in some fashion.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah, for bringing it up.
Good luck with the class.
Yeah. She's such an
Thank you. I'm on
entrepreneur.
I-95 now. Thank
All
you.
right, okay. So it is
I'm
now
gonna keep
9.
listening though till I get there.
Okay. It's 9:30. Who's got something they want to talk about?
I'd like, go ahead.
William?
I would like to hear an update on our, if we have one on state of emergency. And I wanted to kind of point out, I just saw this morning that Orange County, not only did they adopt our 60-day notice rule ordinance. It's spreading like wildfire throughout Florida, which is great. But I think Orange County might be, it seems like they might be the first that are seriously going to take a stab at, at doing the referendum. So I think the August 23rd deadline or whatever is coming up. They might be the first in Florida that takes a serious look at it. So I kind of wanted to take a moment and discuss, where we're at with our state of emergency and start, especially after last night's difficult decision and meeting, to see what we can do to help our renters and people who need the relief, if you will.
I completely agree that I think we have no excuse really at this point for not making the declaration of emergency. Any number of information out there makes it very clear that that is where we are. It meets the definition of emergency. Let's move forward on that actively. And I'd like to hear if there's consensus to do that.
Madam Mayor.
Are you talking? Yeah, Carmen?
I think we do have an update. I think Glenn has an update that the legal team has been working on that effort.
Yes, Commissioner Stokes, I think at the last meeting, suggested a resolution declaring a housing crisis.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's exactly the same thing that Commissioner Diaz is talking about, but hers was, I believe, not geared towards the step of rent control, but more towards the step of declaring a housing crisis. And actually, the question I had is, beyond that, they've got a paragraph with the question mark next to it. Do we also want to do any additional studies? I mean, I think Commissioner Stokes, we talked about a study, but it's starting to seem as if everybody and their sister is studying, and there's so many reports out about there being a housing crisis. So I'm not sure if you want me to include in that resolution a paragraph that staff shall reach out to and bring some expert in to do a study, or is that ship already sailed?
Well, if we want to have a referendum to do rent control, I think that was the thing that triggered the study. Yes,
Right, so that's my
no?
question. Is that
Yeah, basically have, I'm not necessarily saying we should call it a referendum for sure, but let's, if we set the steps up and if we eventually decide that we should be set up to do so, I think maybe more importantly, or something that should be a priority, is to look at what we can do in terms of renters' bill of rights beyond what the state already provides. Like I myself am dealing with a mold issue, for example. And I think we've all gotten reports of people dealing with similar across town. Last night we talked a lot about landlords providing a comfortable place to live, right? Having good insulation and, not letting that humidity in to create mold issues. There's so many things that we can, I feel like as a city, we should take a look at addressing, just to protect both renters and landlords. Honestly, those protections are for both. So
Well, I saw the announcement about the July 30th gathering at City Hall about tenants' rights. There's some folks are putting on, and I look, it's tenants' rights, rent control, and things that what role does the city have in fixing those problems? So I think you're right. I think Ronaldo, that we do have to find out what can we do in terms of helping our tenants.
I think on the tenant bill of rights, I'm pretty sure that Miami-Dade County just passed something or other. We should at least have a look at what they did and see what we can adopt out of that. In terms of answering our attorney's question, I think the key is what Commissioner Diaz said. Let's make sure we have all the pieces in place to be able to move forward, if we choose to do that, to meet the requirements of the state regulations on declaring a rent, I believe moratorium is the right word.
Housing crisis, housing emergency is all the same to me. And yes, I've been consistent in wanting a study done. I don't see any reason to box ourselves into or out of any possibilities. So I think declaring whatever, having the declaration and the study that is going to open the most doors for us is the best way to go, because then we get to choose as time unfolds what avenue we want to go down. I did forward, I think last week, the tenants' rights that Miami-Dade passed. And I believe I think I sent it to you, Carmen, and I asked for 3 things. Can somebody look at this and determine, 1, what can the city do? Like, what can we just do? Like, what from this document can we just adopt tomorrow? 2, what could we adopt if we had the money to fund it at a city level? And then 3, because it's Miami-Dade passing this, what parts of this really can only the county address at the county level? So I think, if we have consensus to like make that a priority of staff or legal or somebody to actually look at that document and parse it out for us, because I'm very proud of this commission, because I think as a tiny, very like revenue strapped city, we are trying to play a leadership role at the level of what counties across the state are doing. And it makes it very challenging for us because we don't have the resources and we're not a county. And I'm seeing most of the action happening on a county level. But I think if we have our staff dedicated to looking at those things and saying, okay, what pieces can we do as a city, like you were asking, Betty, because there are things in there that we can do. I know there are for tenant protections. And then there's other things that are tied to funding. I think Denver, Colorado had a pretty robust tenants bill of rights. And then they had that clause of like, as long as funding exists, like for this, and this. But then what if once it's in there, we can maybe go after additional funding or engage with the county to provide that funding. So I think the first thing is really just doing a good analysis of that.
Yeah, and there's really like, I think weeks ago, Mayor brought up about how, having someone on site within 24, 48 hours. I think things like that are just absolutely huge. I think we just lost Betty though, but there she is. I think things like that would be huge. And as we, prioritize these kinds of policies, I think hopefully in the interim, in the short term, it would help maybe rent rates a little bit if we offer those protections. I think it would help push out maybe predatory landlords. And also, in the meantime, I would love to have the conversation of how can we improve upon people taking on these rights, if you will. I know, like to use the Orange County example again, I know they have like a 311 number that renters can call if they're getting kicked out of their, if their rent is being increased more than 5%, or if they're getting kicked out too quickly. They actually have a number that they can call that leads them in the right direction of how to exercise their rights.
William, you have your
Madam
hand up.
Mayor, I'm
Yep.
sorry, Mr. Waters and Ms. Davis have their hands raised.
I just was calling on William. William?
One other item to keep in mind is that some of our tenants in the city are reluctant to call our office or code compliance for fear of retaliation. And whatever we pass in terms of a tenant bill of rights, hopefully will include something that if a tenant does call us and say the conditions are not what they need to be, or we go out and do use and occupancy inspections and find violations in terms of the minimum housing code, that when those are enforced upon a landlord to fix them up, it doesn't turn into right around a jump in the rent. The place is supposed to meet minimum housing codes from the very initiation of the lease. And so the tenant should not be the victim or victimized due to the fact that the landlord needs to invest in their property and bring it up to minimum code. So whatever we can do in terms of including that in the tenant bill of rights, or strengthening our minimum housing code requirements, or our use and occupancy provisions in this juncture of life would be great.
Excellent suggestion.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah, sort of
Ms.
a whistle
Davis?
clause kind of thing, and some serious protection for the tenant.
Ms. Davis?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just going to piggyback on Commissioner Stokes' mention of the email and some of the studies that we've been reviewing. And of course, through the efforts of the legal team, we used some of that information to create this, I believe they used that information to create the resolution. And so what we needed from staff was the official consensus from the commission as to move forward to do studies, to review the studies, bring suggestions of possible solutions concerning approaches that we can take to make some efforts to address the housing crisis within our ability, and then whatever next steps we need to take to stretch outside our current authority. So with the resolution, it's the first step effort from the commission standpoint to take official action for us to move forward in all those directions that you all just spoke about.
And that's slated for August 14th, right?
16th.
16th. Yes, August 16th. Thank you.
Well, maybe the people that are holding that demonstration on July 30th would be good people to, I don't know if anybody knows who it is, but they seem like a group with that interest. Maybe we could work with them as well.
Well, from my
In terms of
understanding, it's
outreach.
the Guatemalan Mayan Center
Right.
that's heading out, from my understanding.
I think it's a
To reach out
collaborative
to them.
effort. I
Right,
think-
Lake Worth for All, I think.
Yeah, there's a couple different groups I think
Okay.
that are involved.
Well, it's great that we have citizens coming forward, which gives us some momentum as well to say, yes,
Absolutely.
we're addressing this.
Absolutely.
It's good to know we have support, and thank you, William, for bringing your point up, because I just wanted to share, I look at this as, my perspective is housing should be a fundamental right, and we deal with so many comments about our houseless community and issues like that, and what it comes down to is, housing should be a right, and people need to be able to exercise their protections without retaliation. So I think what William brought up should be a central focus of everything we present, because we need to prepare our community for the future. I mean, it's getting difficult. Workers need a place to live, and we need to, as we approve development projects that's going to help with inventory, we need to pick up the other side as well and protect what's out there, because I have seen some really concerning stuff throughout Florida. I think so far I haven't seen too much in Lake Worth, but for example, I recently, somewhere in the Keys, I saw someone literally put up a like Home Depot Ted Sheds thing in their backyard with like a toilet in the corner and renting it for thousands a month.
Well, it's crazy because people that work in Key West, there's a book written years ago, Nickel and Dime by Barb, wonderful study. And you work as a waitress in Key West. Where are you going to live?
Exactly.
Same thing here. I mean, we have the hotel going up, and we're excited about all the jobs it's going to create. But where are those service industry jobs? Where are they going to live? Where are teachers going to live?
So I think I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's good.
It's the Oxycontin talking.
Yeah.
So I think we have a strong consensus on this board to go forward to do that. So
So do we
because our
have
staff,
direction to, for the legal team to present the resolution at the August 16th and certainly
Right.
move forward from there?
Resolution
What
or
is
declaration, whatever is, if we wanted to theoretically exercise a referendum, whatever it needs to be called and set up, we'll do that.
but does that mean that we're looking, that the referendum that I think we're talking about, what the state requires is looking at rent control? Us
Right,
imposing rent.
but I'm saying we're not necessarily going to take the referendum, but let's, just in case, let's meet the foundation, the requirements
Mhm.
of that, so we can have that card if we ever
So-
choose to exercise it.
So if I just recap, so I make sure I know what we're writing, because we've written already the notice of housing crisis and, emergency, the study. So it's going to say the staff to bring back perhaps some type of an RFP, and maybe we actually bring the scope of that RFP to you to make sure it's right, because it sounds like it needs to be a broad enough scope that someone's going to do a study that can support a variety of different potential goals, including maybe a rent control ordinance at some point. Am I hearing that correctly?
A study?
Yeah,
Well, right, in order to ever enact rent control, there needs to be some,
No, I understand that, but I don't know if that's, and Ronaldo, correct me, if that's the direction that we're going in. Is
Yeah,
to do,
and that's part of the requirements if we in the future exercise, the referendum or choose to do that. I think that's a study as part of the requirement.
let's find out how much those studies cost.
I would
before we-
suspect,
And-
yeah,
It's expensive,
yeah.
and
but
the only
we'll look into it.
I would add to the study is encourage the study approach or the RFP for it to look very hard. If there's a study at the county level,
Right,
then the study for the city doesn't need to be as detailed. It simply shows that if you've got a crisis problem at the county level, in a county as wealthy as this one, and in a city that's as under the average of the county as this one, we de facto have it, and you don't need to do an enormous amount of study.
let's find out if the state will let us do that.
Right, and so we have the declaration, but also the tenant bill of rights, and seeing how we can bring in like the mayor's 24-hour on-site requirement.
You keep
Yeah,
saying
it's-
24 hours, and I think it's
Or-
gotta be less than 24 hours.
I agree. If it's like a leaky roof or something, for sure,
Right.
whatever we can do, have someone on site. Things like mold and other issues, comfortable.
Hot water
place to
heater
live.
broke down, toilet
Yeah.
won't flush, yeah.
The
Yeah, that's
tenant-
important. Okay, so, have we got that one under? Glenn, do you know your marching orders?
yep, we're gonna bring back that resolution, and it's gonna authorize a study, and then the scope of that study, I'd like to just bring that back separately at some point in the future, once we get, because it sounds like it could be very broad, but.
I thought we were gonna have a companion item for a discussion so that you could, as we pass the resolution, we can discuss and give you, outside of this tiny little meeting, we can give you better guidance on what we're looking for in that study.
Right, right. And I hear Commissioner Boy about the county. The
Yeah.
county may be doing a similar study. If we're lucky, we could, save a lot.
Well, last night when you all were talking, and really it was a very impressive meeting. I was very impressed with everybody because it was so difficult and you handled it so well. Talking about different things about energy conservation in your home, the foam, the insulation. One thing that we did when I lived up north is every winter, we would plastic our windows. We would, just get plastic and put tape around it. So that was made insulation. It really cut down on the cold coming in because it made that barrier. So that would just, in bag of tools, it's a good one for, we can do the same thing for people with air conditioning. That you just get sheets of plastic and put it around, and it really helps.
And especially for the jealousy window situations,
Exactly.
and do it on both sides.
And it's
so that-
cheap. It's cheap. It's not
Cheap,
inexpensive.
and-
It's something that renters could do, not necessarily the landlords.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would to follow up on
Oh,
last
Kim,
night.
okay, Kim's hand is up. Let me just see what. Kim, your hand is up.
Yeah, I also had a couple additional thoughts last night with conservation efforts, and I don't see Ed on the call, but I know we've been talking about the new billing system and trying to be able to be more flexible in the way that we do things. And I was hoping that we could look into and hopefully implement relatively quickly an opt-in option of, do you want to contribute on a voluntary basis to our conservation fund? Because, you go to all these different places, it's like round up your change, like give your change, round up it to the next dollar, and that will go to this cause. And people are donating money and contributing money all over the place. So I didn't know if there was something with our billing system that if we could have people actually opt in. Do you want to round up your change? Do you want to add $1, $5? I would personally commit at least $5 a month on top of my energy bill. I think trying to initiate this on the voluntary route to begin with, because we have people, there are some people who are more insulated from these increases than others. So if we have people who feel fortunate enough to have a little bit more stability and a little more extra change in their pockets, that care passionately about the environment, about helping people who are really suffering these effects, I would love to try that voluntary approach.
Great idea.
I'll talk to Ed and the team about that, Commissioner.
And I think, quickly as I'm hoping that the billing contract that we approved relatively recently had built in some flexibility to it, that we can make some changes, and that we're what we're looking for is ways to get to yes on some of these things quickly, rather than ways why we can't do something.
One other thing I just want to add to that is if we can implement this, I would like us to also find some language when whatever we do to adopt this to protect that money. It is my understanding that the money that was collected from the previous conservation program was used well for a while, and then at some point it may have been used for other purposes as that stopped, the remaining money may have gotten shifted around. So I just would love to be able to assure people this money that you're voluntarily donating has a restriction on it. It will only go to ABC or XYZ. So
Yeah.
There might be an example that I know of. I don't think it's voluntary or whatnot, but if you look at West Palm Beach, they have something on their water side, something similar to what we're presenting, which they have a whole like education team, where water conservation team, where they go and they table events, they give out stuff, and they do all kinds of things. And that office is entirely funded by their water department. So I'd be curious. I wonder if they already have kind of that type of setup where, X amount of dollars is entirely dedicated to the conservation fund and is not allowed to use on anything else.
Anybody? One thing that we're getting close to time a little bit. Melissa, you mentioned about the Florida League of Cities conference.
Yes, we need to appoint a voting delegate to the business meeting that's taking place in August.
Would you have what's the date of that vote? Do you happen to know that on the agenda?
No, I'll have to find out from Selvina. She didn't tell me the date.
Of course, I'm part of it and on the board, but I don't think I'm going to be able to go and do that conference. I think I'm going to have to reschedule. We have reservations for the hotel for me, but after what happened with the surgery, the doctor's like, yeah, don't be running around a hotel in August.
Madam Mayor, I will be attending the conference.
You will, but
Yes.
Can you be a voting member?
I could.
Oh.
Yes, if you like.
Well, I would ask then that we have consensus to make Carmen a voting member. I see a thumb up. I see another thumb up. I see another thumb. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful. Yeah, I'm gonna wait till the last minute to cancel, but I just don't think it's a good idea.
Okay, well, I'll stand ready, and then we can just talk about the direction of the vote.
Sure. Chris, I see your hand up.
Thank you. I would just like to follow up a little bit on the meeting last night. I too thought that the discussion was very robust, a lot of good ideas being circulated around. My sort of context is we've voted now to increase the price of electricity for residential and probably similar for commercial by approximately 20%, slightly under. That's a big jump. We also have been informed that it's very likely that it's going to go up more in next stretch based on the predictions of gas prices and so on. I think, to me, that's in the same sort of crisis area as the rents, that we need to project a very strong message out to the community that we are going to do everything possible as quickly as possible to help people offset that price increase that we don't have any control over. That's coming from outside prices, that what it costs to make electricity. What we do have control over is helping people with giving them the knowledge, giving them any possible tools to reduce their consumption. And I can tell you a reduction of consumption by 20%, or if the price goes up more by 30 or whatever percent. If you look at the industry on conservation efforts, a movement of 2% of 5% is huge. So what we are what we are needing to facilitate as a city is a very intensive goal. And I think we want to make sure that we have a way to review all the pieces, because it was a little bit fuzzy in the discussion, the things that we added on to the motion, that as part of increasing it by 20%, we want staff to do X, Y, Z. Let's make sure there's some mechanism that whoever captured that, it comes back to the commission individually, but quickly, and make sure that we agree, yeah, that captures everything. I think the overall approach needs to be any tool that would help consumers either hedge against future price increases or deal with consumption now needs to be on the table. Our community solar program needs to be really seriously amped up. I think that our mission statement of what the utility is about, that it is focused on helping consumers, that it's focused on reducing their bills, those need to be strongly built in. Long-term, we need to have a focus on tree canopy. That helps in reducing the usage. So those are things that are on my list, that we can't go out to the community and say, hey, look, we voted to increase the price, we had no choice, and switch out your bulbs. Well, we know full well that switching bulbs is a nice idea. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a good idea, but it has like a 0.1% influence on your bill, on your usage. It's a good thing, but it isn't going to fix the problem. We've got to give people tools that actually help them.
William, I know I talked to Aaron like very soon after getting elected about increasing the tree canopy. It's been something that's been kicked around, and we continue to say we want to do this. Is that something that is happening through your department, William, of trying to help us figure out some possible paths forward on how to actually make that a reality?
Yeah, we can do that. I believe the tree board used to have tree giveaways. I know that we're looking at repeating that. And you all also opened up the door in some instance with the apartment complex on Detroit, that you will be open to non-native shade trees when their site is constrained. Our code is pretty heavy when it comes to natives and having shade, and palms don't really count as a tree unless there's a clump of them, and there's a minimum amount that have to be deciduous, and there's a maximum amount that can be palms. But we have a lot of properties in the city that are bereft of any landscaping. They're constantly being turned into code compliance for having either an asphalt yard or no trees or no landscaping, and some kind of incentive program to encourage people that already have property to plant trees is where we need to go in one respect, because again, there are a lot of properties in the city that do not have a single tree on them.
Right. And I don't think that they know about the tree giveaway and stuff. I talked to Aaron. I was like, I love the tree giveaway. I love that we're giving away trees, but I think we should be more targeted in our approach to how we're trying to like, do we target one area of the city and like get the neighbors together and say, wouldn't you guys love to have a street line tree like road, the tree line road?
I think it's up to the city. I think we need to be when I drive up Federal, when it turns into Olive Avenue, and 20 or 15 years ago, they planted a lot of trees. And now you drive up there and it's amazing. It's so shady. Why aren't we planting trees on Dixie? And I don't know what kind of trees they are, if they're native or not, but they're really shady. They're very attractive. And why aren't we doing that on Dixie Highway or every street that we can possibly do it on? We need to set the example.
So can we get,
trees?
I know we're running out of time, but I think I know last night was focused a lot on electric utility and stuff like that. And a lot of this we've talked about is going to be a multi-departmental approaches, but I think it would be great to have some discussions and some possible paths forward so we can actually start, making this a reality.
Yeah, let's plant some trees.
Mayor, may I interrupt? Because I want, hopefully we can extend your meeting a few minutes on two things. One is that when Olive Avenue was done, they reduced the lane widths from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, and were able to add bike lanes and space for the landscaping, because I was living there at the time. We do have constrained rights of way, but Commissioner Stokes and the city manager and I met earlier, I can't remember what week it was, and we have the mobility plan coming up, and we would like to give a presentation to you all about what all is encompassed in mobility. And one of the discussions in that is having a right-of-way sort of ranking in a way, or a rating to show where we could feasibly add trees, say, to Dixie Highway. What are the ramifications of having that be a tree-lined street? Are we going to have to give up vehicular capacity, or are we going to have to give up possibly a bike lane or whatever? So I'm sort of asking two questions, is that our mobility plan could encompass a right-of-way complete street approach, which does include landscaping. And two, are you all open to a presentation from the mobility guru? Her name is Lisa. She works with WGI. That's one of our consultants, and she's given presentations to the city twice. And I think you all may be surprised as to what all is encompassed in the broadest definition of what is mobility. And if you're open to it through consensus, we'll try to schedule something with her in September.
I think that's an idea, and I very much like the idea and, of complete streets. I think we all have said we support that, and that complete streets do include the shade component, which is so important. I mean, if you've biked at all here, I've mentioned it to city manager numerous times. One of the reasons why I bike to meetings is to try to make sure I'm experiencing what a lot of people in our community experience. Mm-hmm. And biking down a street with no trees on it is pretty brutal, and walking is even worse.
Yeah, and
Dixie Highway could be a pretty street if it had some trees on it.
Yeah, and
makes all the difference.
And bringing up WTI, William, I think another thing that hopefully can be included in this conversation is a true canopy study to see what we have out there already.
Well, I believe the tree fund could fund something like that. We'll have to get an estimate of what a tree canopy study actually would cost and bring that back to you. And it may require a budget amendment of some sort. We will not have that ready for you to entertain as part of the fiscal year 2023 budget discussions.
And I'd be a little cautious on the study. Keep it very minimal. You could do a Google Earth study, and it wouldn't take a lot to figure out that we have very little tree canopy, and we could a lot more. I think, I like studies, but I also like I support the mayor's view. Let's get on this. Let's figure out, New York City, I suspect it was a nonprofit initiative, but they have a Million Trees project. And I think that I haven't looked into it in a while, but when I last looked into it, they made enormous progress. And another one that I forgot to mention earlier, if you go to 17th Avenue North, which is also called Keller on some parts of it, I can't remember which is which, but on the west side of 95, you will see that about 2 blocks of it, I think, are very tree lined. That was an initiative of that community quite a while ago, and it's remarkable.
Beautiful.
It's worth, just driving, walking, biking through that to see. And I've talked to the guy that started it a couple times. It makes a big difference. And there's tons of studies that tell you property values go up if you put trees, all that stuff. We know heat island affects electricity reduction. It's the right way to go.
Yep. Well, I think we have consensus.
Great.
Anything else anybody want to talk about? So quiet.
Too.
Well, I think I mentioned it, but it might have been sort of in the stream of consciousness there. I hope that there is consensus for us to move forward on a clear mission statement, probably through the EUAB, and look real closely at the integrated resource plan for the electric utility, that the urgency now is much higher, that we really need to make sure that we are looking out for consumers given the external price increases.
Yeah, it's terrible. I really don't have anything. Ronaldo, anything?
Nope. Other than thank you. Last night was definitely really tough. But I think it really showed me, and I'm sure everyone else, the cohesiveness of this team, if you will, not just the commissioners, but thank you, Carmen, and and Glenn and everyone involved that, you know, the free flow of really good ideas is really encouraging because it's a tough time to live in for sure. And I think we're fairly well prepared to do what we need to do.
And take the heat for it. Which is what we have to do. So any staff have any contributions or words of wisdom? All right, well,
Take care of your knee.
yeah, physical therapy starts today. I can hardly wait. But it's, you know, it is what it is. I just have to get through it. But I
Yeah,
appreciate, and the outpouring of the flowers that the staff sent was lovely. And, you know, the outpouring of concerns that I've gotten on Facebook, it's lovely. It's very sweet. I
I
very
heard
much appreciate it.
one of the soccer teams has already contacted you. So, you know,
Well, I would
keep
have to
healing up.
I'd have to set aside my ballet career in order to go to soccer. So, you know, and it's a hard choice, hard choice.
It's diversity.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And I guess we'll see each other soon.
All right.
August 2nd, I guess, is the next meeting.
Correct.
Keep
And
healing up.
I'm gonna appear, but I'm gonna appear by Zoom on that one. I don't think I'm in for that one yet. I'm trying to
Okay.
figure out how I'm gonna get down 3 steps out of my house is my next challenge.
One
Be
step
careful.
at a time.
One
That's
step at a
right.
time. Well, I had an ambulance bring me home because I was so afraid of going up the stairs, so I may do that. All right, thank you.